Macros are easy to create. You just tell Excel to start recording, perform the actions as you normally do, and then tell Excel when you're done. Behind the scenes, Excel uses VBA to record your actions. You don't have to know anything about programming or VBA to create macros. However, if you want to modify the macro, then VBA will be helpful to know. In this following exercise, I'm going to demonstrate how to record a simple macro. It's just going to insert your name into cell A1 of this active worksheet. So I'm going to begin with a brand new blank workbook. And in the ribbon's View tab, I'm going to go on the far right-hand side, click on the drop-down for macros, and then click on Record Macro. You can also activate the Developer tab for the ribbon and then select Record Macro from there. Now you notice that this opens up the Record Macro dialog box. And there's 4 different options to complete in this dialog box. The first is the macro name, and the macro name has to start with a letter, and it can include letters, numbers, and underscore characters, but don't include any spaces or special characters like question marks or asterisks. Also, macro names cannot be names that are already used by VBA. And toward the end of this course, in the resources section, I have a list of reserved keywords, so take a look at those to see which ones you cannot use. So the first thing you would do is add in a macro name, and I'll just go ahead and call this my name. Notice how I'm using toggle case here. Next, you have the shortcut key. This allows you to run the macro by holding down a control key or a control shift key and then choosing a letter, a number, or other characters on your keyboard. But be careful not to use a shortcut that's already reserved in Excel or in Windows like Control S. Then we have Store Macro In, and there's 3 different options here. The first one, the default here, is this workbook. So the macro is going to be available only for this file, only for this workbook. I'll click on the drop down to show you the other 2. We also have New Workbook, and this option opens up a brand new Excel file, and the macro is going to be available in that file. And then you have the Personal Macro Notebook. Now, this option creates a hidden file. It's called the personal.xls, and it's going to store your macros and make it available for all of your Excel files. So when you're creating your macro, just decide, do I want it just for this file, or do I want to be able to use it throughout all of Excel? So for instance, if I'm creating a macro here and I store it in the Personal Macro Workbook, and it's one of the best macros ever, it gets all my stuff done, my reports, it looks awesome, and then a coworker says, hey, I like that, can you go ahead and help me with that, send me that workbook. Well, if I email them this workbook, they're not going to be able to use the macro because again, it's available for your computer for all of your Excel files. Now, if I want to create a macro and have it attached to the file so that when I email it, other people can use it as well, that's when I would choose this workbook. All right, and next we have description. Description is also optional. This is where you can enter in a description of the macro, maybe who the author was, the date that it was created, why it was created, or any other useful information. Okay, so I have the macro name of my name. I haven't added in a keyboard shortcut just yet. I'm going to store it in this workbook, and I'm not going to give it a description here, but I'll go ahead and click on OK. And now the macro is recording. You can tell the macro is recording because if you look at the bottom left-hand corner, there's a little stop button there to stop recording the macro. Also, if you click on the macros drop-down in the View tab, you'll see Stop Recording, so I know that I'm actually recording the macro. Alright, so in A1, I'll go ahead and type in my name and hit Enter on my keyboard. Now I'm going to stop recording the macro. Again, I can click on the little Stop Recording button on the lower left. And fundamentally, that's it. That's how you create a macro. It's simple, right? All right, so next I'm going to test to see if the macro works.